Like,
Go for it. Carry on.
well, no.
No, go on, carry on. Don't.
Welcome to the Two Swigs and a Sig podcast. I'm your boy
Starting
Camel,
a
and I'm
deep
here with.
conversation.
Before we start this podcast, we've just got some interesting conversation going on between Camel Finance and Cobra Stacker about Freemasonry. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked by the question about life forces under aprons. And where the hell is this going already?
There you go.
Do you want to carry on quickly before?
Well, no, we'll bring it in later if it comes up. Not
Yeah,
literally comes up.
It literally comes up. Yeah, very good. Very good.
dear.
Oh my God, I can really see where this is why I want to call it Way Out There, Cobra.
Fair enough.
There you can see. Everyone will get the gist of it. And I've got and getting back to your question about it, it's down to me to brand it and get the brand and what it means, and hopefully we can all sort of promote it anyway. Anyway, welcome to the very first Two Swigs and a Sig podcast. This episode number 7. We're now called Two Swigs and a Sig, which is really exciting. A lot of people have suggested that, and yeah, it's really cool. I think it's really appropriate. You've obviously got me, a bit of a swig, and a bit of other things. You've got the Camel Finance, the other swig, and Cobra, the Sig, swig, everything. But basically, say, welcome, guys. Welcome to the new branded version, episode number 7. You guys okay?
Yeah, well, good. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for welcoming us again.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm also doing great. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's cool. Before we get into it, we've got a bit of a theme tonight, but quite rightly, just wanted to ask you both how you're finding things. How's sentiment out there? How's your little things that you're doing on, or big things really, that you're doing on your channels? How's the feel out there for you?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. We're coming off the back of a little toxicity patch, and I'm glad to see the back of it. It's slowly but surely turning positive again, and I suspect that will continue up until Bitcoin decides to trade down. But in the short to medium term, things are starting to look like they're getting a little bit more positive in the space, which is nice.
Cool.
And in the world of golden, sorry,
just before, and I'll ask you the same thing, just the back end of that. That's on your social side. What about outside of that, Camel? What's the sentiment like in your day-to-day observations? Anything changing?
Day-to-day observations, the biggest thing I've noticed is the stock market. I'm slowly but surely seeing more and more of the people that have been calling for tops the entire way up or shorting the market the entire way up. I'm slowly but surely seeing them throw in the towel. I'm slowly but surely seeing the bears become forced bulls. And that is exactly what I expected and hoped to see around this time. So again, encouraging signs as far as I can tell.
Wicked. And outside of it all, like in the real world, I call it, you day to day, if you ever go out, friends,
I don't go out.
Okay, don't go out. Fair enough. Bloody hermit.
No, day to day, yeah. I mean, I live quite a secluded, isolated life. But yeah, family are good. I've had my mum's dog. She's been on holiday. The wife she's been out shopping and spending a lot of family time recently. So yeah, can't complain. Everything's good. Dog is knackered. He's been getting extra walks because it's summer. Yeah. So yeah, happy days.
Cool. Cobra, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, on the gold and silver side, a lot of confusion. Very much like Bitcoin, I would have thought. It shot up and then it dropped down again recently. And also with people, a lot of them that I talk to are changing their minds constantly. Should I be grabbing silver now? Should I be grabbing gold? Should I carry on with collectibles? Should I go more back onto bullion? So because of the volatility of gold and silver at the moment, how it's going up and down, people really aren't sure what they're doing with it. People are still buying. The money seems to be still there at the moment. But then I think a lot of that is because the people who are buying gold and silver are doing it to invest or to store their money anyway. So, yeah, it's a very weird thing out there at the moment. No one really knows what is going on, shall we say.
Okay, and then is that a general, like, with your interaction via your channel and what you do? What about out there in the real world, is what I call it?
Well, I mean, a lot of the people I deal with out there don't know or don't look into things the way, say, we do. So within the community of gold and silver and investments and all that sort of stuff, people are thinking like this. When you get out there to the general public, I don't feel like they're even thinking about that. A lot of them are week to week or month to month, just paycheck to paycheck, getting on with their stuff. And they're not thinking on that level. Yeah, you'll hear some comments from people saying about prices of certain things, or, you know, a little moan or groan that things are hard. But otherwise, not too much on the outside, really.
That's really interesting because for me, I'm starting to hear people feeling the pinch a little bit more. For argument's sake, my youngest boy works at a cinema, and probably over the last 3 or 4 weeks, the amount of people going to the cinema is drastically reducing. Drastically. He's lucky to sometimes have 7 to 11 people in the cinema watching a film, which has been a notable decline. Don't know what that says. I have no idea. Maybe it's the quality of the films. I haven't got a clue, but it just seems a little bit strange. People aren't meeting on a day-to-day basis while I'm out there. My industry, people are still quoting for work, but they're not getting it as much as what they were, which is interesting. A lot of my older customers have a lot to say about certain things, and the general sentiment that seems to be coming from my older customer base seems to be the what am I trying to say? The sentiment of, oh my God, how do the youngsters get on nowadays? How the heck can they afford to do anything without any help? And that
But have you not heard that for years?
That's becoming just more of the general talk, more than what I've heard before. So sorry, Cobra. Yeah.
No, that's all right. I was just thinking, like, I've heard that for years, you know, how the young uns going to cope. I mean, years, you know, you can't get a mortgage without a deposit, which is so high now, and et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, a good 10, 15 years of that. So, again, in security, we're extremely busy, but we have found local councils. We've got a lot of work with local councils in security, and they are cancelling a lot of their outdoor events because they are in very tight times. There's no doubt that a lot of the councils are suffering financially, but the work is still there for us. So, you know, obviously different industries will have different things going on.
Yeah.
But the hardship of the youth, I think, has been there for quite a while. The house prices rose at such a rate that it was nigh on and wages did not increase at the same rate. So it was nigh on impossible, very, very hard for a young'un to get a deposit together without help from the bank of parents, bank of mum and dad. But I feel that's been for quite a while. Maybe I'm mistaken, and it's getting worse.
No, I don't think so. It's the great thing is it's just about observation, isn't it? And your daily interaction and what comes up in conversation, and it's really interesting. I find it really interesting, more and more and more. Camel, do you want to just jump in on that one, or?
Yeah, I definitely think it's harder today than it has been, for sure, because of the interest rates, for one. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we had this issue where if you go back something like 50, 60 years, you needed a 3.2 approximately multiple of your salary to get a property, to get a mortgage. That would have been enough, plenty, in fact. And nowadays you need about 6.7 times the average annual salary to be able to entertain the equivalent house. So yeah, the house prices have been, I was going to say the house prices have gone up, not entirely accurate, right? The currency has been debased against the houses, and wages haven't kept up with that debasement. So you now need twice as much salary to get the equivalent house and the equivalent quality of life. That's been the case for a while, but I definitely think over the last 3 or 4 years, given the way they've hiked the interest rates, you know, that's made the monthly payments unaffordable to a lot of people. And even the people that have already got their first home and were potentially looking to move to that second home, they are now kind of stuck, because before the hike in interest rates, they could have sold their property. You know, they would have had a bit more equity than when they first purchased the house, could have taken that, perhaps have saved some money in the meantime, and then stepped up to the next size property, as is sort of typical. But those people can't move anymore because the interest rates are so high that even the additional equity in the house, even any additional savings taken into account, their wages haven't kept up with the increase in interest rates. And so those people that would normally have been leaving their primary house and moving into that second house, they're not moving now because the interest rates are so high that they can't even afford to, because of the way that the salaries haven't kept up with the interest rates. So it is definitely harder. I think it's been a problem for a while, but like I said, with the interest rates being where they are, that's certainly added a layer of complexity. So I, for example, know some people that are quite a bit younger on my wife's side of the family. They've got a deposit saved, but they're in that exact position where they can't actually get a mortgage because the interest rates are so high that the banks won't lend them the money based on them not being able to service the debt at the current interest rate. So unless rates are cut, which is what they've been told, wait for interest rates to come down, and then you can come back and we'll entertain a mortgage. But yeah, so it's definitely harder than it has been, particularly in the last few years. And but it's also been a problem for a while.
Yes,
yeah, I agree. Actually, I didn't think of the interest rate bit.
And do you know the other funny thing about the interest rates? Most people don't think about this because they don't live in those echelons of life. But when you're talking about like the rich who typically don't need the mortgage, right? But they would get the mortgage because they can use the capital that's not tied up in the property for investments, for business ventures, whatever else. With interest rates this high, when you scale this up to multi-million pound properties, we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in interest rates, right? So even the super rich that would normally be like, oh, I'll acquire this and that, and then I'll save the rest and put that in some other business venture. Even they're sitting back now and saying, well, I'm not paying all that interest, right? Because, you know, it's all relative. When you increase the number for the property, when you're talking multi-million dollar properties, well, now the interest rates come up to a point where this is just unsustainable. So you've got the super rich at the top going, no, I'm not touching property for a while, or put my money elsewhere. And then you've got, like I said, those people that would normally be transitioning from their first house to their middle house. They're going, well, we can't afford the interest rates. And like I said, even at the bottom of the chain, you've got the people that would be first-time buyers. They also are suffering because of the interest rates and are being told you're going to have to wait until the interest rates come down because you don't earn enough to be able to service the current level of interest.
So that's going to stagnate the market.
Well, it has been. It has been. We can see this since the last 18 months. Property has been consistently declining.
Interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. And that's a great way to kick off the podcast, isn't it? Get depressed.
Well, I mean, everything is secular, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, fine. But I'm saying the house prices have come down over the last 18 months. That's true. But before that, they shot up through the roof after it, you know, in response to the printing that we saw from the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's like a boom and then a bust, and it will probably level out in the not too distant future. We're talking about having the Bank of England and the ECB potentially engage in the first rate cuts as of June's meeting. You know, even if that's pushed back a month or two, we're probably not too far away from seeing the interest rates be coming down again. And once those interest rates start to come down, typically we would expect to find a bottom in the property prices within, I don't know, 8 to 12 months, somewhere in that region. And then again, you know, the cycle goes on. More printing is to be expected later in life. That printing will drive the property prices up. Eventually, inflation gets out of control. They have to raise the interest rates, and we do the whole thing all over again. But in the short term,
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, in the short term, there's perhaps light at the end of the tunnel, because if you have been disciplined enough to be saving and focused and thinking slightly longer term, then, you know, these interest rates should start to come down, whether it's months or, you know, 6, 8, 10 months. At some point, we are going to see these interest rates come down again. And as they do, then that should stimulate people being able to get the mortgages. That should allow people to step in and buy their first properties. Should also allow the people that have already got their first properties to move into the second homes. And again, at the upper echelons, you might see people saying, well, I'm no longer going to have to pay 120K a year in interest on my multi-million-dollar property. I will step in now and start to buy up a few bits. So yeah, everything is cyclical. Everything is boom bust. And we're probably closer to the end of this lull period than the start.
So you don't think that we've still got a recession to come when you say we're probably towards the end of it?
Oh yeah, that is still my base case. Yeah.
Okay.
And in those recessions, we see unemployment spike. We see unemployment cause people to not be able to service their mortgages. That floods the market with additional properties. That's what usually catalyzes the final leg down in property prices. And then eventually it gets to the point where, you know, the people that are over leveraged are flushed. The house prices have now fallen to what is essentially an attractive level for the high net worth individuals to come and buy them. All of this is coupled with the response from the central banks, which is cutting interest rates to try to, you know, curb some of the damage from the recession. And like I said, then the whole thing kind of goes round again.
Interesting. Well, this is brilliantly coming into the theme of today's podcast, because all of a sudden, for a little glimmer, then I went from negative to positive, and then the reality is, oh shit, we're going to go back into, you know, remember that there's a possible recession on the line, some pain before we go through that next phase. So I think we can pretty much say that things aren't looking too brilliant going forward, maybe in the short term. And does that mean we're just going to go through this cyclical, kick it down the road, fiat, cyclical session again? Or can that carry on? Or do you two both think that there's got to be a possibility of this coming to an end at some point, and the introduction of a new system, dare I say it, CBDCs? Off you go.
Well, you're the more knowledgeable one, so I'll start with a briefing of what I think, and then you can give us the lowdown on what reality is, let's say, or as close to. My thoughts on it are, yes, I mean, I was extremely worried that this could come sooner rather than later. And I remember in the last chat we had, Camel was saying, well, no, you know, still probably looking a few years down the line. But I was thinking about a few things with this. And one of the thoughts was that there's still an older generation which use cash, are used to cash, and will want to carry on using cash. And I don't think that CBDCs can be brought in the very near future, shall we say, because they need that generation to die out, let's say, and the younger generation who are more used to computerized currencies, whether it be Bitcoin or anything else, adopting CBDC is a lot more easier than the older generation. So then that puts me in the light of they need to kick this can down the road for quite a while longer before they really think about bringing in CBDCs on a permanent basis or as a complete takeover. Or in other words, does it mean we'll have a CBDC running alongside a currency for a fair amount of time?
Yep. I think, well, last time we spoke, it seemed pretty doom and gloom, to be honest. But I don't know if you're aware of this. The House in the US just passed a bill which is anti-CBDC.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's two ways to look at this. First way is the optimistic way, which is that's positive. People are starting to figure out that actually, no, we shouldn't be, what's the analogy here? They shouldn't be digging their own graves on this, right? They should be realizing that this is harmful for almost everyone apart from the people at the absolute very, very top. And therefore, maybe having a CBDC is not good for even the politicians, let alone their families and everyone else. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is maybe they're just going to release a CBDC and they just won't call it that. Right? Maybe it's going to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. And they say, well, it's not technically a central bank digital currency because it's actually not on a blockchain. but it may still have all the familiar symptoms and horrors of the CBDCs. So there's two ways of looking at it. For now, it's pretty early. I think it's way too early to entertain whether or not this means they're not going to get away with it. I still am in the camp of people that believes they are going to try and at least launch a CBDC. And what you said about the youngsters being way more intuitive in their acceptance to this, right? They're used to digital money. They're used to everything being digital. So they would be more than willing to accept it. They're also in a situation where, I don't know if you've seen these trends on like TikTok and Twitter, where the sort of 18 to 22, 23-year-olds are regularly posting saying they feel scammed because they went to school or college or whatever, they got a job and now they're working and they can't afford anything, right? They can barely make ends meet, let alone the idea of raising a family and owning a property. And they're all just kind of starting to ask the question, like, why am I doing this? Why work? I don't mind working if I can get a house and a family, but if I can't even do that, then what's the point in working all the time?
Yeah.
So they're starting to realize that something is broken, something is wrong. And yeah, like you say, they're probably going to be, number one, more intuitive to accepting digital forms of currency. But also, number two, they probably got the most incentive, right? If you already own a house and you've already got some assets and you've got, whether it's a large amount of wealth or just enough to say, actually, I don't want your CBDC, that's one camp of people, right? That's one thing. But if you're an 18 to 20-year-old that has been working for a few years and has realized, oh man, I'm never going to make it, right? I can barely even afford bills, let alone the mortgage. The mortgage companies won't even give me a mortgage unless I've got a partner earning an equal wage. And even then, we're barely going to be able to put food on the table. So those kinds of people are probably going to be way more incentivized to say, oh, you know what, you give me the CBDC and the UBI. So yeah, for those people and for the people at the very bottom, the very poorest people that, again, can barely make ends meet, they're going to be more than willing to accept the UBI and any kind of CBDC format. Of course, they also are going to lack the education financially to understand the implications that they could be used for nefarious things or could have a level of control and tyranny attached to them. So it's going to be an interesting time. Like I said, I think we spoke about it last time, but initially there's a group of people that think things are going to come tumbling down in the next, whether it's a few months or 18 months, whatever. There's some people that think things are going to come tumbling down within the next couple of years, and that is going to be the cataclysm or out of which they try to launch the CBDC. I'm kind of in the camp of people that thinks that's not enough pain. And I think I touched on this last time we spoke. If we went into a recession and a big stock market crash today, even whether it's today or a few months' time or 18 months' time, when we go into a recession, at first people are going to say, well, it's just a recession, right? They, on average, last 12 to 18 months, and then everything kind of recovers and we build back better, or whatever the slogan is. And there's a whole group of people these days that are, I call liquiditists, who just believe the Fed can just print and it doesn't matter. Everything's going to go up forever because they just can print an unlimited amount of money. Maybe that's true. We're going to find out. But either way, I don't believe that they can just crash the market in a 12-month period and then have everyone begging for mercy. I think how you create that begging for mercy situation is you first have to have an ordinary recession, 12 to 18 months. Then they have to launch the printers, inflation goes up, assets have a bounce, but then they roll over again, one more time. So everyone's expecting, oh, here we go, the end of the recession, buy all the stocks, printer go burr, everything back to all-time highs. But what I think is the max pain scenario is, instead of go back to all-time highs like we saw out of the pandemic lows, instead we get a lower high, another rollover, and then everyone's going, oh no, what do I do? We've got massive inflation. Commodities have gone through the roof as a response to that inflation, excuse me. That also would mean that food prices have gone up loads, of course. That would mean gas, electric, all these other bills have gone up. In response to the inflation, we would see them hike interest rates again higher than this time around, which again would make people even poorer. And at this sort of area, that's when I think we would see people begging for mercy. That's when I think they would have created the max pain scenario. That's when I think the people will be the most susceptible to accepting the CBDC launch. But I'm not in this camp of people that thinks they can just crash the market and 12 months later, everyone's begging for CBDCs. I think first they've got to, like I said, launch the printers, inflation goes through the roof, everyone's bills go up, high interest rates again. Everyone's like, oh, I can't do this. At least the stock market, I can make money in the stock market. No, that rolls over as well. And then by the time all of this is played out, we're talking a few years, a good few years. I would guess somewhere around the 2028 timeframe. That's probably when they'll try to launch the CBDCs.
Evil plans.
It is. I don't think it's going to work. And maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm kidding myself. But in a way, I kind of think if you just assume the Max Payne doom and gloom scenario, then what's the point in any of this? So I tried to be optimistic.
I just see people reacting towards all this. If it goes that way in 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it may be, where everyone is just suffering and it's pure pain, I just can't see people tolerating it.
Yeah, I agree.
I see a lot of unrest. I see a lot of unrest in people. Whether it be rioting or demonstrations or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I just see a lot of unrest if this is the way it's going.
Yeah, and out of order comes chaos, right? So it's kind of been my base case that we're going to see that. We are going to see the unrest. We are going to see a bunch of rioting, chaos. Well, I mean, we saw it in the pandemic, even in the pandemic, and people were no way near the level of financial suffering that they probably will be if what I'm just speculating will occur actually does occur. When people are actually starving, the riots will be a lot worse. Right. When people are actually losing their houses, assuming we get to that point, then the riots are going to be a lot worse. In the pandemic, at least people had a home to go back to. They were annoyed that they were being told they couldn't leave their home, but at least they had a home. If you start to take people's homes and food from them, then we get to this situation where you've got a man that's got nothing to lose anymore, which is, of course, the most dangerous type of man. And so, I expect you're absolutely right in this assessment. There will be civil unrest. The question is, of course, does it lead to a prosperous future, or do we end up in some kind of weird dystopian world? As you know, and I've said every time we've spoken, really, I think they're probably going to be able to capture, they're going to aim for 100%, and they're probably going to hit somewhere in the 10 to 20% captured region for CBDCs. And I do think there's going to have to be a dual system, at least for the medium term. I just don't see any other way of doing it, really.
That's what I think. I don't think it can totally take over in one fell swoop. I think it has to run together for quite a substantial amount of time. And so people can sort of accept both. They get used to it quite easily. I mean, it's even like credit cards, debit cards, and all that sort of stuff now. We've got so used to that a lot of us don't carry cash very much at all. In fact, I rarely carry cash. And so if you introduce a system like that, and basically very slowly people are getting used to it, they'll just start using it very nice and easily, boom, 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 and then slowly we take away the cash, and now you're under our control.
Yep, and do you know where I could see it going? And I was talking to Camels about this just a few days back. We could both kind of agree that we could see it going down the route of them restricting retail's access to investment, meaning if you don't have a liquid net worth or a liquid portfolio of, and this number is complete conjecture, it could be 500,000. That's usually, at the moment in the UK, that's what qualifies you. If you've got 500,000 in liquid assets, so basically 500,000 in investment accounts, not including your primary form of residence, then you can qualify as a professional or accredited investor. I think it might be up to 2 million, perhaps. That was what Camels was speculating. But I could see maybe after this whole thing plays out, that by the time we get to the end of this, they might turn off the doors. They might seal the doors and say, if you don't have a liquid net worth of X amount, whether that's 500,000 or up to 2 million, like Kemazabi thinks, then, everyone sub whatever that threshold is basically locked out of investing, locked out of owning assets. And everyone above that will be considered, quote unquote, a responsible investor, an educated investor, and they will be allowed to continue to participate in stocks, trading, everything else. So
what, we just lock out the lower people and say, right, you can't do it? Why? How would that benefit anything?
Well, it would be a control mechanism more than anything. They would do it to say that essentially it would be rules for thee and rules for me, right? It would be the little fries, the smaller guys, they would be trapped in the CBDC system, and then the people with the higher net worths, they're not going to tolerate it. So they would essentially be saying, if you've got a net worth over X amount, then you can continue to trade stocks and have access to investments, and everyone else would kind of be locked out of that situation. So, I mean, this is
society.
Yeah, a two-tiered society, and this is highly speculative, and it's not something that was in my personal base case, but having spoke to Kemazabi about it, he did make a very good point that this is kind of typical in terms of you would expect to see this at the end of the long-term cycles, and that just so happens to be where we are at the very end of these multi-decade cycles. So we can't rule it out. As ever, I try to be optimistic, And I don't believe in living in a fear state. And like I said to you before, if we're just going to assume that we're all completely captured and CBDC slaves, then what's the point in doing any of this, right? Might as well just enjoy the last few years we've got. So I like to try to remain optimistic, but we certainly can't rule it out.
I don't think they want to, or it will be of any beneficial use to destroy society as it is. Remember the old adage, "Oh, you're a productive member of society." Well, you're only a productive member of society if you want to work for society and pay your taxes and do your stuff, and there's that money flowing around. But if you make a two-tier system where one side is capable of earning money constantly and all the rest, and the rest of us or whoever are sitting down here sort of suffering and dying and starving and no proper things, they're going to rebel. Yeah. And that's not going to help the people on top. They need us to be subservient, but feeling like we're achieving.
Yep. And there's a theory that kind of feeds into what you're saying, that the way they're going to do this is to destroy the property market prices. So one of the ways that you can essentially keep everyone happy is by moving the property prices so low that suddenly everyone can afford a house again, right? And so there's this idea that real estate is just going to forever come down and not be responsive to inflation. They're going to put measures in place to keep the real estate prices down so that people can be happy. They can go to work and they can own a house. But what this would mean is for a lot of the middle class that have a great deal of their wealth in property, they would obviously be wiped out and they would end up being, put back down towards the lower class. So it is a pretty speculative theory. I'm not entirely sure how they would pull it off, but I've seen quite a few people talking about this as a real possibility.
Yeah, dangerous. I mean, anyone who owns property then would basically lose everything they've worked for all their lives and be put back to square one. Yeah, okay, they've got a property still, but you just have to have the money to survive, as in food and whatever else, clothes, whatever else you need. I don't know. Cool. I mean, I don't know. How would I feel about that, owning a property, say, if the price suddenly dropped? But if every price was dropping anyway, everywhere, then let's say my house is worth $500,000 and all the prices dropped, then the bigger houses that I might want to move into would also drop.
Yep, that's true.
So it wouldn't affect me that badly.
Not necessarily, no. Unless you were highly over leveraged on your mortgage, and then you could run the risk of slipping into negative equity.
You'd be in major trouble then, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But there's no quicker way to win over the vote of an entire generation of, say, sub 28 years old than to make property affordable to them.
Yeah.
You offer the ability for them to suddenly be able to afford a house. You get 100% of the votes. I'm not really in the camp of people that think voting matters, but that's another conversation.
Very interesting. What would you say this is a dangerous time to sell a house at the moment?
I mean, I don't think you can sell a house. And I guess it depends. I'm not going to claim to be somebody that watches the housing market all the time. I do pay reasonably close attention in my local area. And something I've noticed consistently over the past 18 months is more and more houses are coming on the market. They're not selling. I'm also noticing more and more houses, say 18 months ago, they've had 1, 2, in some cases, even 3 reductions in price, and they're still not selling. And I think it goes all the way back to what I was saying about the interest rates as a reason for why they're not selling. But for me, if you can sell your house right now, I don't think it's the end of the world. I just think you're going to struggle to actually sell it, at least in the area that I live. That seems to be a pretty obvious observation.
I think it does depend on areas.
I do think if you were going to buy a house, then historically speaking, based on historical data, you're better to wait for the onset of the cutting cycle, wait for a few cuts to get behind us, and then that typically marks close to the bottom. So if you wanted to buy a cheap house, or if you're sidelined with cash waiting to buy your first house, typically the best thing to do is to wait for a couple of rate cuts and then step in and look to buy.
Is this a good time to keep your money in a bank, though? Let's say if you had money in a bank ready to buy a house, and with the risks of a recession and bank closures and stuff like that.
Banks are super over leveraged and more financially stressed than ever. I mean, deposits are insured up to 85k in the UK.
We haven't even got enough money to cover that, bro.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I
There's
mean,
not enough money to cover that. That's a lie.
no, no. But I mean, you can hold it in gold, right? If you don't want to carry the counterparty risk, you can hold it in Bitcoin or silver. Silver is probably not the best thing because you pay the VAT when you buy it, and then the spread's pretty wide. But
And I
there are
accept that.
ways.
I accept which is what we do is we hold a lot of our money in gold and silver, or I do. But the point is, if you needed that cash, if you haven't got, let's say, the YouTube channel or the customers in that way or the people in that way to sell to, it's not always that easy to sell that quantity of gold.
Yep.
You know, we could be talking 30, 40, 50 grand's worth of gold for a
Yeah.
deposit.
Yeah.
You can't always sell that easily
Yep.
when you need that money, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's true.
So you keep it in a bank. We hit a recession. Banks have problems. The insurance company can't cover the 85,000 on the accounts, and you're in a world of pain.
Yeah, absolutely a possibility for sure. I mean, you're talking to a person who keeps 0.1%, if that, of his net worth in the banks. I've been that way since about 2017, 2018. I essentially keep the money to pay bills and a tiny bit that I owe the tax man or the accountant at the end of the year. So yeah, you're talking to somebody that has zero trust in banks, right? Completely zero trust in banks. But not everyone is in a position to do that, right? Not everyone can weather volatility. At the same time, I keep a large amount of money, well, large relative for me, in trading accounts. And you know, if we enter a recession, they can blow up just as easily as banks can. So it's not like I'm immune. It's not like I'm immune by any stretch of the imagination.
And there's also, I mean, you must know about this, and a lot of people don't in banks. Have you heard about the opt-in thing with banks? Basically, if they go bust, they can take your money. They can literally take your money and issue you shares of a bank. Well, what are those shares going to be worth? Nothing, because the bank's going bust. Do you know about that?
Yeah. So what you're talking about is bail-ins, right?
Bail-in, sorry.
Yeah. So a bailout is when the bank goes bust, the central bank will bail it out, right? They'll print money and say, "Here you go. Here's the money
Yeah.
that you lost." But bail-in means when they go broke, they can take customer deposits to plug the holes from their chicanery. So it's a completely different thing.
I didn't even know until maybe a year and a half ago that existed, and most people don't. But it's
You're
in
right.
the actual terms and conditions or whatever that they can literally, if they're going bust, take your money and nick it.
Yeah. So the 3 rules of banking, these are my favorite 3 rules. Number 1, okay, the money is not yours.
Yeah.
Number 2, the money is not there. Number 3, the money is not real money.
He's screwed. I hate banks.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous and it is ridiculous, but this is the reality of the situation. So it is what it is.
How can they be allowed to do that? You know, everything a person's worked for and he stores it in a bank or even several banks to break it down into less than 85 or up to 85 in each bank. And they can just turn around and go, yeah, sorry, we're going bust, we're nicking your money. I mean, how is that even allowed?
Well, the reality is, I'm not saying this is right, but the reality is when you open a bank, there are terms and conditions. And in there, it says, in the event that we mess up, you can give us our money to plug the holes. And we all sign that or tick that box. Whether you read that, whether you understand that is a different matter. But we
Tell
all
me
tick that
one
box.
person who ever
I
read it.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me one person who ever read it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's such a scam. It's amazing.
Yeah. Nobody hates banks more than me. And, you know, this is why I'm so pro Bitcoin. Be your own bank. But it is what it is.
But then, as we say, you know, we're looking at it shooting up at the moment. We're looking at Bitcoin shooting up, and then a major sort of downfall for it for a period of time. Obviously, I'm not talking about forever, but you know, so it's all well and good saying, yeah, all right, let's say I've got 200 grand now, right? And I've got a choice between putting it into banks, which could possibly go bust and nick all my money, or put the 200 grand into Bitcoin. And for the next 2 or 3 years, you know, once it crashes, I've got half my money until it slowly comes up again, but I need that money. What happens then?
Yeah, it's a very difficult game. It's one that we've all got to navigate. And, you know, the reality
it's hard to know what to do with your money. That's the problem, to keep it safe.
It is. That's absolutely true. And, you know, allocating money to Bitcoin at the lows is one thing. Riding it up is another thing. But then the reality is you do have to exit near the top. Otherwise, you have to be ready to weather up to an 80% drawdown. And that's no joke. That is no joke. And you know, there's various ways to do it, right?
And when you pull it out, it's either put it into gold or silver, because the stock market would have crashed as well, probably. Put it into gold or silver. And then again, we have that same situation, that how do you liquidate it easily if you're not in a position to, in a normal circumstance, a large amount of cash, as in 200,000, let's say, that's not going to happen easily.
No.
So every which way you look, it's very hard to protect your money and still have access to it when you need it.
Yep. And it requires a certain amount of faith in a system that really deserves zero faith.
There is no system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
So wild times.
Yeah. Is CPM still awake?
Dude, I've just been listening to you both, and we didn't stay on CBDCs for too long. Weird. I was still stuck on one of Cobra's comments where people are dying because they've got no money, and there's people out there rioting, whatever. And I'm really pleased with what Camel said, because I'm quite happy, because none of this affects me, because I sit outside that threshold. So I'm really lucky. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think life in
Really? I just lied there. I haven't got 2 million.
I didn't even listen to you, bro.
Why do you think I've got 2 million quid just sitting around doing nothing?
Oh, I thought you meant to the downside. I thought you meant to the downside.
No, I was being stupid. Guys, yeah, there was a lot said there. I just want to bring it back into a couple of things Camel said and a couple of things you said, Cobra, was I'm going to flip it a little bit and just ask you both a question and use your imagination and tell me why possibly you think CBDCs could be a good idea. I know this is a really different way of talking about it because we all hate it, the ideas of what we know, but I just want to flip it over a little bit to say, can it have, is there any way that a new system could be advantageous to a Western economy, whether that's via resetting everything, whether that's via just the along the route of UBI, is universal basic income paid in CBDCs? You know, do you think there could be any benefit at all, especially if it was brought in slowly?
For me on this one, look, the reason people don't like CBDCs or the idea of CBDCs is because of the potential of what they can use it for. In other words, they can restrict how you spend your money. They can make it have a shelf life, as in after a year that money goes, or after 2 months it goes, or whatever else like that. Now, they are the fears that people have, and which is why they don't like them. But if it doesn't mean because they have the ability to do that, they have to do that. So if they used it as an actual currency, and it was just now computerized one, because technologically we have developed to a stage where that would be the easier way and the better way, then I just see it as another currency. Now, if it's backed by something that gives it a bit more power and a bit more strength, and so that could be fine as well. I cannot see any benefit to UBIs at all, apart from depression, apart from laziness, and a sense of entitlement. That is all I can see from UBIs. I see no benefit to that at all, apart from ruining society. The one thing that gives a lot of us strength is a sense of achievement, is a sense of doing something for yourself and achieving something and getting somewhere. Well, that's something that's given me strength, you know, that I have come from the bottom, and I mean literally the bottom, and worked my way up and achieved something. Well, if you want UBIs out there, and no one has to really do anything, and people say, well, we can be more creative and we can be more arty and we can start living life. No, you can't. What a load of rubbish. You are going to have no aim, no goal, and so I don't like it. Yes, CBDCs, if they don't use all the restrictions they could possibly use and actually use it as a currency, yeah, it's to me, it's just another currency. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that one, Camel.
I think you kind of nailed it in a way at the start for sure when you said, you know, it could be used for bad or it could be used for good. If they decided not to add any of those tyrannical type surveillance and features, if they decided to not have expiries, not have product lock-in, i.e., you're not allowed to eat meat because that's bad for the environment. Let's say they didn't do any of that. I guess there are some potential benefits, like interbank settlement or worldwide settlement would be instant, and you'd be able to transfer money from one person to another in an instant. You wouldn't have to worry about waiting a few days for payments to clear. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I kind of see what you're saying about it would just create laziness in a way, but in another way, I maybe have a slightly different outlook on this in that the lazy people will already be lazy, right? If you're already lazy, you're already laying around doing nothing. And if you give them $1,000 a month, will they just spend that on weed or video games? Maybe, right? But I think potentially if you give a lot of people $1,000 a month, they might think, well, actually, I enjoy being a nurse and it pays me enough money now that I've got an extra grand a month. Maybe that's the way it would work. For some people that are already in higher paid jobs, they'd probably just take that money and put it straight in the stock market or cryptocurrency or some investment. So maybe there's an argument to be made here that if you give everyone $1,000 a month, the lazy people will keep being lazy. The people with no financial discipline will just find a way to spend it on extra trainers and clothes and holidays. But at least that would maybe increase their quality of life. And, you know, for the financially disciplined people, they'd probably be able to take that £1,000 a month and invest it somewhere to grow it. So there's perhaps an argument that the lazy
Okay,
people
can I
are
ask you something on that?
Yeah, sure.
What happened during COVID? They dished out money left, right, and centre. You could get 50,000 grants. You could get paid for sitting at home, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
What happened when it all came to an end? A lot of people didn't want to go back to work. A lot of offices said, yeah, we can do without paying out for offices and all that. Or businesses said, we can do without paying out for money. People didn't want to leave the house. They got lazy in that way. The younger generation are more entitled. They feel they are owed something rather than having to work for it. So I think we've seen a very brief look at what giving money to people can do, just giving it to them.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. But then to counter that argument, just for the sake of a thought exercise, if we gave everyone £1,000 a month or whatever the number is, right? Do you think that as a hardworking man, they would be able to catch you up if you continue to have your discipline and hard work? If everyone's got £1,000 a month extra and you have got £1,000 a month extra, do you think they're going to be able to outwork you? Really? I mean, I'm genuinely asking, do you think people will, that £1,000 a month will give them the motivation to outwork you? Or do you think?
No, I agree. But then if you look at the benefit system that was introduced some decades ago, did it really help in everything? Or did we find more people then trying to use the benefit system to their advantage and not have to work?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yep. I can't even counter that argument because I absolutely fully agree. Yeah, you are right. So maybe
they used it. They just, people became lazier. The work ethic probably in the 50s and 60s and all that lot was a lot better than what it is now. And people try and they find ways, and it goes generation to generation where they teach their kids how to claim benefits, how not to work.
You're right. Yeah. So overall, probably we can perhaps conclude that the CBDCs are net negative.
But Same with UBI. It's not the CBDC, it's the UBI.
Yeah. But I think the CBDCs are too, because for most people, like say you need to transfer 20K to a relative abroad, right? If you have to wait 3 days for it to clear, 5 days even, is that the end of the world to you? Probably not. If it could settle in 30 seconds with the CBDC, does that suddenly justify having a CBDC? I personally doubt it does.
I don't think that's the only reason. I think our currencies, as we know, are collapsing. Our national debts are absolutely stupid. The country's debts are absolutely stupid. So, you know, if it was to be a reset and we then brought in CBDCs, and for several reasons, whether it be technology or the reset or anything like that, CBDCs were brought in as the new financial currency, then that's just a simple thing. The thing of whether it can clear in a day or instantly or whatever makes no real odds to that. I mean, that's just a benefit of it. But CBDCs, if it is just a currency, which is now modernized, no issue. But if it is restricted in any way, or they use the technology for nefarious use, we have a problem.
Yeah, and then you've got to look at it from a historical standpoint, and that is that, is there ever an example in history where you give these sorts of people that kind of power and they don't abuse it? And of course, the answer is they abuse it in every single single case. Every opportunity they get, they abuse. They find a way to abuse it. It goes all the way back to the times when the goldsmiths, who, the jewelers, this is hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they would have the secure vaults and they would keep their gold and their jewelry in this secure vaults. And people would come there and say, well, can I pay a small fee to deposit my gold, right? And I'll use this as like a bank. And they would say, yeah. And it took them no more than weeks to work out that they could write more IOUs for the gold than they had gold in the vaults, right?
Yes.
So this was the very first example of this rehypothecation and the whole paper gold thing, when the blacksmiths and the jewelers worked out, or sorry, not blacksmiths, the goldsmiths worked out that not everyone would come to claim their gold on the same day, and thus they could just essentially create their own wealth and by issuing more paper claims than they had gold in the vault, because they could always make the assumption not 100% of their customers were going to turn up and demand a redemption of their gold on the same day. So,
well, that was upscaled on a massive level with America and what it did with the gold reserves, backing the currency with the gold reserves. But then there's always going to be that sort of they'll take advantage to a point to where they can, but again, it's to a point, because if you take advantage too much, people are going to rebel against it. And therefore, I say again, CBDCs, yes, where they can get away with things here and there, they will. But can they turn around and tell me that the money I've earned will disappear in 2 months? Or if that's just UBI and they say, well, you have to use that within 2 months, fair enough. But then, do you know what I mean? It's how far you can't buy meat. Are you taking the piss? You cannot control me that much. People already will rebel if they're too controlled. And so this is what I mean. There's a limit to what they can do. Yes, they can do certain things, no doubt. They're corrupt, they're greedy, and they will. But there's a limit to where you then tip that balance of the scales to where you're upsetting society that much that they're going to rebel against it.
So can I just ask a question with that?
Yeah.
Because if there's validity in whoever's pulling the strings to do whatever with our currencies or CBDCs or whatever, I'm sure they would know that at the back of their minds. So wouldn't the art of bringing in anything be in such a way that it's drip fed very slowly into the psyche of the economy? So it doesn't become that, oh, today, Cobra, you can't do this, or Camel, you can't do this. It could be not in. It might not even. I might not even see the full extent in my lifetime. But one of the things I've been gradually more aware of is to try and look at what's going on in the background, at the slow effect of the things, to manipulate thought and processes into people's way of life without them freaking knowing what they're doing. So I look at it as, if anything like that's going to happen, I can't see the powers to be, or wherever it is, the secret 13 or whatever that was mentioned before, or above that. I can't imagine them not thinking, oh my God, we can't go too drastic here. It's got to be like smoke and mirrors job, through the back door job, and just slowly brainwash the peasants into slowly, becoming more and more reliant on state provided benefit, which quite rightly you spoke about earlier, Cobra, and just drip feed it in, just so we don't even know, and our generations that are growing up don't even know it's happening. Do you think that could be a better strategy? Not that it's a better strategy, because I don't agree with it, that may be going on.
I actually agree with you on that one. I think not just in the case of CBDCs or UBI and all that lot, but even what we were saying where they use that money to restrict you from buying certain things. They won't, like you said, they wouldn't just suddenly turn around and say, right, you can't eat meat no more because everyone's going to go, well, that's just an example. Everyone's going to go, well, piss off, I want to eat meat. But if you look at society and what we've done over the last 20 years, and you look at how veganism has become such a big thing, or vegetarianism or whatever, and now you get protests from the woke side blocking up McDonald's saying, yeah, you're killing animals and you're doing this and you're doing that. They feed it into society, and especially through the education system in colleges and universities. And those people are the ones who are growing up to bring these new things into play. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. Whether we put it down to, you know, what I'm talking about there with meat or anything else, any other thing, feed it in from the young, let them learn that this is a wrong thing to do or this is a right way to go. And as they grow, they will then distribute that same information to everyone else and push it forward. And so they use the colleges and the education system to put agendas forward anyway.
Yep. Indoctrination camps is a better term than schools.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah. And they probably will have to drip feed it, right? I mean, the sad truth is, if you offer a lot of people UBI, there's probably at least like 20-30% of most Western societies that will be jumping for joy. Like, you're going to give me $1,000 a month to do nothing? Where do I sign? Right. And they don't have the education or the financial literacy to even contemplate that might have, you know, some negative drawbacks or some strings attached. They'll just be really, really happy to suddenly have some free money, right? It won't even cross their mind that, why am I getting free money?
I mean, this is the thing. Don't you think, like, we've seen this? I went through a very, 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 very tough time when I was younger, and I never claimed benefits. It was always a thing of, I will not claim benefits. It's a trap. Once I start claiming it, I'll rely on it. I'll never push myself forward, right? But now they're very eager to get that. And as you say, if UBIs come in, everyone will be jumping towards it, going free money. Nothing's free. Nothing's ever free.
Yeah. But I mean, to be completely honest, Cobra, I completely respect what you said, and I completely resonate with what you said. But the harsh reality is, most people aren't like that. Most people will say, oh, I need benefits. What am I going to do? I need benefits, right? You have to have a certain level of mental fortitude, of strength, of masculinity to say, no, fuck the system. I'm going to do my own thing, right? And the reality is, most people aren't like that. Most people will say, oh, I don't know what to do. I have to ask for help. I have to go to the government. Please, Mr. Government, feed me, right? So I completely understand. And like I said, I completely resonate with what you said. But the harsh reality is that is unfortunately not how the majority of society would respond.
And can I just jump in there to a perfect, I love the way you eloquently put your words together, Camel. And I've got to try and...
Are you saying I don't?
Yeah, probably. When you mentioned, and this will set Cobra off, and I know it will, you said about the masculinity of society. And I think we can all see that that's slowly being, through wokeism. Yeah, off you go, Cobra. I know that would kick you off, but I think it's very pertinent to the conversation, really. When you look at everything that's going on very slowly over time, how the breakdown of everything's sort of happening, really.
I think we touched on this in the last conversation we had, and it was basically that they were putting down men, making them feel guilty for being masculine, making them feel guilty for anything they do, even with adverts and all sorts. You know, I think I mentioned it before, the Gillette advert was always a manly man having a shave, and he was a man, masculine, and all that lot. And then they changed it to, we should feel guilty for being a man, and we should feel guilty for toxic masculinity and all this sort of stuff. They have put men down to a point where they have weakened society, and they continue to do it. And this is the left approach, and this is, again, indoctrination, like Camel said, in the schools and all that lot, that we should feel guilty for being a man, guilty for being strong and all that lot. Well, weaken society, and then you have the opportunity to come in and take over a lot easier. And that's what's going on. So, yeah, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the wokeness. I'm proud to be a man. I'm proud to be masculine. It doesn't mean I have anything against women. Far from it. I love and respect women. And you're finding women are getting fed up now because they're saying, well, it's getting really hard to get a real man now, you know, like, so it's a load of crap, but I see a ulterior motive, and I do believe the powers above feed these little things in to break up society, divide and conquer, keep us weak, and then do what they want with us.
Camels, sorry.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And it makes perfect sense if you think about it, right?
Yep.
The last thing you want if you're trying to control and dominate a population is a bunch of masculine men with masculine energy that are willing to stand up and even die for what they believe, that are not scared to speak their mind, and that are more than happy to call a spade, right? They're more than happy to say, no, that is immoral. I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to accept your narrative. No, I don't actually think that just because you tell me this is okay, that means I have to accept it into my paradigm. I think that's one of the reasons we see this attack on the masculine energy. I also think at the same time, they are deliberately making females more masculine. I think I think we're absolutely seeing this, and they're encouraging them to do more masculine things. They're encouraging them to sort of stay away from a more traditional role. And that's absolutely fine if it is objectively your own desire as a woman, right? But the reality is, what you can notice is they try to compete with men in the workplace, and they try to do this whole masculine energy thing where they're very aggressive and they own their own what's the word, they own their own presence, and I just want to put my career first and blah blah blah. And then eventually they get to the point where they're reaching that age of around 30, and suddenly you can see them have this realization, and they go, wait a minute, actually I really want a baby, actually I really want a strong masculine man, and I really want to stay at home and raise the baby, but I've invested all this time and energy into being a career woman and competing with these men. And suddenly they're forced into this internal form of conflict with themselves, where they're like, well, am I going to keep pursuing being CEO of this company? Or instead, do I want to listen to my body that says, actually, I'd really like to have a family and raise that family? And so this whole dynamic has been mixed up. At the same time, we've got women being told, you know, it's empowering to go and do your thing and be a man, essentially. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's genuinely your heart's desire, right? I want to be really clear about this. I'm not by any means suggesting women only have one job, and that is to raise a family. But what I am suggesting is, if it's not your internal desire, if it's not even your own idea, if it's just what society has conditioned you to believe, that you need to go out there and compete to be CEO, only to eventually get to 30 and realize, actually, I'd rather raise a family, right? Then at the same time, you've got the feminization of men who are scared to speak their mind. They are scared to be masculine. They are told constantly that they need to just stay at home and, you know, play video games and not go out there and try to conquer the world and try to build an empire. And then this whole sort of force has been inverted. And I believe the entire reason for this is because men and women form two halves of the same whole, right? They need the divine unity. They need a family. You need to have a masculine man and a feminine woman in order to put them together to create one big whole, one divine whole. And there's no quicker way to separate a society and tear it apart than to have men give up on being the protector and the provider at the same time as you have women just looking around going, why are all these men so feminine? But then at the same time, they don't want to submit to a masculine energy. They don't want to say, you know what, actually, I want to follow this man's lead. And you can't really even blame them, since the majority of men aren't even in a position capable of leading. So it's a very weird thing, but it kind of makes sense. Like, if you want to tear down society, if you know, there's nothing stronger than a man and a woman that have found oneness together, right? There is nothing more beautiful. There's nothing more perfect than both bringing the masculine and the feminine energy together and operating as one. That is where true growth occurs. That is where true inseparation occurs. And if you're going to try to tear down society, the quickest and best way to do that is to emasculate the men and make them give up. Oh, I'm just going to sit around and play video games all day. I don't care, right? At the meantime, you've got all these women trying to compete to be CEO, and then getting to the point of 30 where they're going, oh, actually, maybe this was the wrong decision. Like, why is my body conflicted with what society has conditioned and programmed me to think? And there's no quicker way to just separate society, right? And everyone is losing here. The women are going, where are all the good men? The men are going, oh, these women are crazy, right? And ultimately, there is no divine unity. There is no interconnected spirituality. There is no perfect balance. There is no yin and yang between the family principles. And so,
brother, it goes even further than that. They've been breaking down families for years, even with divorce. And you look at our parents, our grandparents, they would stick together for years and years and years through all the ups and downs. No matter what, they'd stick together. I'm not talking about physical abuse or mental abuse, but, you know, tough times and all that sort of stuff, they'd stick together. Nowadays, we encourage divorce. You know what? If he's no good, leave him. Blah, 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 blah. You give the women the power to, the minute you leave someone, 50%, boom, gone. You know what I mean? No matter what. So you give them an incentive to divorce. One argument, one big argument, and boom, we're separated. So you've broken down the whole establishment of a family there anyway. Abortions being easier. I mean, look, that's a very hard subject, obviously, because there are many different ways of thinking about it. And so I'm very in the middle on that one. But the whole family unit is being broken down constantly. And then you start mixing up genders and all that lot and saying, you can be a man, you can be a woman, you can be a tree, you can be a cat, you can be a dog, you can be what you want. No, you can't. No, you can't. And there is strength in both women and men, but they are different, and we are different. So when you start trying to put us all into one thing, man, women, you know what? I'm gender neutral. What are you talking about? You are not gender neutral. And half of these people don't even know what they're talking about when they say something. You turn around and say, okay, well, what does that mean? What does pansexual mean? Well, I'm not really the most qualified person to tell you what it means. Well, shut up and stop calling yourself it then.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? 100 different genders plus. What are you talking about? You're making up a new one every day. So you've broken down society so much now, and you've indoctrinated these students to believe that, I mean, some of them go, no, there is no individual sex. It's a socially constructed thing. You're talking rubbish. It's not. It's not. Yep. And it's so aggravating to me to watch this happen and to watch our youth being brainwashed into this rubbish where they actually don't know what reality is anymore. It winds me up massively.
I would never have guessed.
I've got a big question for you here, Cobra. Do you blame anyone for this? Do you blame men? Do you blame women? Do you think it's both of them? Do you blame the orchestrators at the top? I personally fall in the camp of people that blames men for this, because in my experience, if you are a strong masculine man and you bring strong masculine energy, if you do the things you're supposed to do, you work hard, you build an empire, you work out all the time, and you embody that masculine energy despite what all of the conditioning and programming would try to discourage, right? If you do all of that, I find, generally speaking, that women will innately recognize that and be willing to fall into a more feminine role. So I'm curious to know if you think this is no one's to blame, if you think everyone's to blame, or if you think, because I kind of fall in the camp of people that think men are to blame here for becoming weak and becoming soft. So I'd be curious to know if
I can't agree with that totally, and I'll tell you for why. Because I believe that if there is someone or people at a higher level, there are government things that are being done now to enable this behavior. Okay, so even in your speech and how you react, and it's a hate crime now not to call someone by their gender in certain places, especially in America, and that spreads over to here anyway, inevitably. So when you start using politics and you start using laws that actually make society do this, look at some of the politicians that are too scared to say anything. And so when it comes from the top like that and feeds down, then there's a major problem here. And it's not men just doing it. It is society in general. And something is pushing that agenda, because you are making people adjust to it. When the BBC are turning around and acknowledging that there is 100+ genders, then you're giving the younger generation the validation that, yes, actually, this is all true. This is real. Look, even the BBC says it. When you're putting books into schools that are absolute rubbish, saying, yeah, look, there was a cartoon I saw, and it was a dog meowing like a cat, and another dog turned around to this girl and says, oh, what is he doing? And the girl goes, well, what's the problem? If he wants to be a cat, let him be a cat. Stop talking shit. You're educating people with this. So no, it's not just men, because they're agreeing. They're teaching the men as well that, look, they're trying to neutralize everyone. They're neutralizing everyone. They're making them, look, I'm going to say, they're making them all units. You know what I mean? Just boom. You're nothing. You're not a man. You're not a woman. Both sides. You're just a nothing. Gender doesn't matter anymore. It absolutely does. And when the women are trying to be strong and all that lot, and I'm a strong, independent woman. But the minute something happens that they need a man, they're the first one to call for it. Now, except that there is things for women that they do well and are brilliant at, and we need them. I'm not saying for 1 minute we don't need women, but they will say quite clearly, we don't need men.
Yeah, they
Yes,
will.
you do.
Yep.
The whole infrastructure that you're living in, the maintenance of it, everything is done by men. Acknowledge that. There's no harm in it. We could not live without women, and women cannot live without us. But embrace our differences. Sorry.
No, mate, don't say sorry, because this is fundamentally part of the bigger problem of what I said earlier. And this is the smoke and mirrors, guys.
Yes.
This is totally the smoke and mirrors. Because it's really interesting what you said, Camel, and what you said, Cobra. I was sitting there thinking, I was thinking, okay, if you wanted to change the concept of how families, men, women, families work, if you really wanted to change that over time, then slowly my evil mind would say, okay, what was back in the day? What was the purpose of the man? What was the purpose of the woman? Generally, it sounds terrible to say that, but it was real once upon a time.
Yes. Yeah.
And how do we break that down? Well, if we take away slowly the role of how that man fitted in to that concept of family, if we take that away slowly, like the responsibilities, you don't have to work as hard, encourage, and this is over time, encourage women, if you're not happy, we'll look after you, we'll give you a bit more money, and we'll help you through the court system, and you don't need this and you don't need that, and the guy has to pay for it all, but you don't need him. We'll make sure he pays for it. Come on. There was a big hoo-ha about that, big time, 20 years ago. And if you see that, the blame is that possibly the system somehow has made it easy for men to walk away from that sole responsibility of standing up and going, fuck you. You ain't doing that to me. This is my family. I'm going to look after you, get over whatever. And please encourage us as a unit. They've slowly took that away over time, and it's become very evident that what I see is that guys just don't probably feel like they need to have that get up and go and right now I'm going to have a family, I'm going to support them till the day I die, because it's too easy not to.
But that's toxic masculinity, bruv.
There you go.
To think like that's toxic masculinity. That's what we're being taught.
Yeah, and just getting back exactly. And that's happened over time. It's been a brainwash. I've seen it myself, over my period. But getting back to what Camel was saying, it is the man's fault. I totally agree. It is the man's fault, because the men at some stage should have realized this and just gone, nah, fuck that. You ain't doing that. You ain't doing this.
If you're
going to fight it a different way.
But
exactly. But if you've got over time, I mean this, mate, because once you get that generational splits over a couple of generations, when men don't feel like, oh fuck it, I haven't got to support my family. Fucking the state can do it. I'm gonna go and play with my mates, as they do, as we are, given half the chance. If you take that responsibility away and you make it easy, men become lazy. And they've done that over time. It's unfortunate that possibly at some point a generation should have said, son, what are you doing? You don't do that. You fight for this. You fight. And it just hasn't happened. And probably over 2 or 3 generations now, that's become so far apart. We're in a situation that we're in today, and that's got to be a win-win for whoever's pulling the strings, really, because they're breaking it down. They're certainly breaking it down. Sorry,
I agree totally. Camel, I mean, I don't know. What's your thoughts, bro? I agree. We're being smashed apart and then controlled.
Honestly, I blame men. Honestly, I do. I blame
Yeah,
men, and I think
right.
on because the reality, at least the way I see it is, if men are strong and masculine, okay, then everything else kind of falls into line. Everything else kind of falls into its place. Strong masculine men that can control their emotions, right? They don't do things that are unethical. And it's my own personal experience that when you're a weak man, women don't even look twice at you. But when you have all your ducks in a row, so to speak, right? When you've got everything sorted out, when you carry a high level of masculine energy, they're more than willing to look up to you. And they tend to be like, okay, this guy is competent and confident and he knows what he's doing, right? I'm going to listen to him. But if you're not in a position of masculinity, if you're not in good shape, if you don't have your businesses in a row and everything sorted out, then they kind of don't look twice at you. And I guess it's kind of a weird thing to say, but that's just my experience. My experience is that if you do the right things, right, if you act like a proper man should act, then women, generally speaking, are more than happy to be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And then they seem to fall in line. And I find that even the most sort of angry masculine women tend to take a step back and go, wait, whoa, this guy's different. Right. That's just my personal experience. Like women don't tend to be hyper feminist and hyper masculine in the presence of a masculine man. That's so I kind of want to put this on men. Like if men didn't sit around smoking weed and playing video games all day, right, and watching pornography like 5 times a day, then maybe they'd have some energy to do some push-ups and focus on their business. And if you do those simple things, you would be surprised how quickly things change, right? How quickly like natural order is restored, how quickly the yin and the yang is restored, and things just seem to work better that way. And so that's really how I see it. It's just that if men could just be men, women will tend to recognize that very quickly, and then everything seems to slot into place after that. No,
I
no pun
agree at
intended.
our age, but then what I'm talking about is if they're being indoctrinated, sorry, from school and unis and college and all that sort of stuff, that masculinity is toxic. We're all this, we're all that, and we're equal in every way, in shape and form. Then you are breeding a generation who are not going to be masculine because they believe it is wrong to be masculine. So if we're talking about people our age, bro, or our generations, yes, I agree, be strong and all the rest. But you are bringing up a generation and telling them that actually be trans, be this, be that. Don't be masculine. It's terrible. The patriarchy. So what I'm saying is the generation that's coming up now is being educated in that way.
Yeah,
and so they don't get to the point of being masculine because they're told it's bad.
Yeah, so I completely agree that, I agree with everything you said, except in my personal experience, right? If you are a feminine man and you say the things that you just said, people go, oh, that's toxic. Oh, I'm not listening to you, blah, blah, blah. But if you are genuinely a masculine man, if you are genuinely well built, if you are genuinely quite well off and on top of your business game, then you're allowed to have these opinions. And in my experience, people respond completely differently. Right? I know people in my circle and my family that cannot have the same opinions with me as me. And if they do, people go, how can you say that? Right. And even these people are scared to speak their truth. But if I say the exact same thing, everyone be quiet and everyone listens, right? Because they look at me and they go, that is a man that knows what he's talking about. And it's only because I work out every day. I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm on top of my business game, right? And I bring masculine energy to the conversation. And so when I speak my truth, right, it doesn't matter if it's even necessarily correct. People sit there and go, well, I trust his judgment because he has that level of masculinity. And I believe this is what I'm saying when it comes down to the men, it being a blame here, right? If you are genuinely full of masculine energy, people will listen to your opinion because they know that part of masculine energy is to speak the truth without fear of consequence, without fear of judgment. And so I completely agree that these indoctrination camps, aka schools, colleges, universities, I mean, I went to these things, right? I went through the normal route, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, that means everything is doomed. yes, these people are being indoctrinated. Yes, people are being told there's no such thing as gender and there's 100 genders or whatever else. But one thing I have noticed over the years is when you put a genuinely masculine, energy filled man in front of these people, suddenly they're willing to listen. Right. And I really, really, really think that if men could just focus on being masculine in their energy and learning to do the things that they should do as a man, then suddenly things start to slot into place. That's my own personal experience. And like I said, I completely agree with what you're saying. The schools are are completely crazy, right? They shouldn't really be allowed to be doing the things they are doing. But like I said, if you bring a certain amount of energy and you've got all your ducks in a row, so to speak, then it's my experience that you can get away with saying things and people will be more responsive to those things than if you are, for example, a very feminine man, then suddenly nobody cares what you have to say, right? Innately, on a subconscious level, people just look at you and go, if you're a feminine man, they look at you and go, I don't care what this guy has to say. What does he know? Right. But if you have a certain amount of energy and presence, then all of a sudden people are willing to be like, maybe he knows something. Right. That's my personal experience. So, yeah.
Do you think, yeah, it's very valid. It is a really valid thing. My only little issue is probably something what I said in my last video that I just did yesterday. I posted it out today. Is that I think the ultimate responsibility is we want dads back. We want fathers. We want male mentors to start to do the sort of stuff. It's very powerful what you just said, Camel. I really appreciate that. Because that is the essence of what a male should stand for. I think you look at what happened. I don't know the true story behind the Andrew Tate lark. Why is he being attacked so much? You know,
but he was accused of
yeah,
grooming girls into pornography and that type of thing.
But what was he doing? He was being an alpha male, trying to tell people, I presume, yeah, there's all sorts of motives behind why he was doing it. But ultimately, what you see is alpha males trying to do alpha male things and promoting that masculinity within men again. And they've tried to take him down.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing with him was, yes, I agree, and I listened to a lot of his stuff, and I agreed with a lot of his stuff. But sometimes the way he puts things across is not always the best.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to get into like his personality, but it's just what he was portraying, like the outside of the box thing, similar to what Camel was talking about there.
I absolutely agree. What he was saying, the principle of what he was saying was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when he got put in prison and all that lot, it wasn't because of that stuff.
I had no idea, mate. I don't know the ins and outs of the case. So I was just looking at it as a masculinity thing.
Yes.
And I'm a firm believer that to really get that back into the generations down below, and it's a simple question. If you had a family and you had sons or daughters, but sons especially, because this is a subject, and your son was coming home from school and saying, Dad, you'd say, fuck off.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't.
Agreed.
Well, you might do. I don't know. But you would tackle it in a very fatherly way and just say, come on, no way, boy. Come on. Yeah, you're fine. You're a lad. You're a boy. This is, this is what we're going to do, And it's that educational thing. But that's been broken down. That's been broken down so much over the years. It's almost in one or two generations now. And it's mad. I'll give you a prime example, actually. I had a picture from my daughter the other day. My grandson was fast asleep on the floor holding a dolly. I went apeshit. I went absolutely apeshit. Stupid, maybe. My wife told me, what are we getting so out of the pram about? But she went, oh, yeah, I know why. And she said, well, didn't you have dollies when you was a kid? I said, fuck off, did I?
No.
Dollies? She said, well, you had an action man. I said, yeah, it was an action man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Said it. I had an action man if I was lucky. So, and he's just like, what? What on earth? And I think, oh, come on. I'm not going to talk about the kids, but you just think, oh, if that's just Oh, that's fine. That's cool. No worries. And you just think, whoa, what are you doing? What are you letting in? And this goes back into the finance. It goes back into whatever.
Yes.
It's strong. What you two are talking about is so strong. And I'm really proud that we can talk about it openly on this podcast because it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's really the truth. Sorry, Camel, I've stolen that away from you and you, Cobra. So.
No, not at all. I don't have kids, so I feel like I'm not qualified to speak on this.
I think you've been very qualified, but just being logical and
Well,
sense.
I mean, if I was to have kids now, I have spent some time thinking about this, and I think as crazy as this might sound, if I had daughters, I would want them to live as sheltered life as possible, and I would want them to be treated completely different to if I had sons. If I had sons, I would essentially, and it sounds kind of weird, I know, but I would kind of want them to have a hard life. I would want
You're
them.
absolutely right.
I would, because I had a hard life and it molded
Yes.
me into the person that I am today. And the person I am today can overcome adversity, is mentally strong, is capable of, working and having morals. And that's what I would want from my son. My son, I would want him to overcome multiple hardships because I believe that it's through those hardships you become more masculine. But if I had daughters, I feel like it's the opposite kind of thing, right? The more trauma a woman has to overcome, the more masculine in energy she becomes. So, like I say, I'm kind of very cautious to speak about this because I don't have children, and if you haven't raised children, it's kind of like how could you possibly know what you're talking about? But innately, I've always hoped and prayed that when I eventually do have children, I have sons because it will be much easier to discipline those sons and instill a hard working ethic into those young boys, right? That you can, and I know for sure I'd be the number one priority would be always think for yourself. Okay. Don't necessarily trust people because they're teachers. Don't necessarily trust people because they're adults. Think for yourself, make your own decisions, and ultimately, overcome adversity and grow into be a strong masculine man. If it's a daughter, what on earth would I do? I honestly don't know. I would largely hand that job over to my wife because my wife is the best woman I know for sure by a country mile, and I trust her absolutely. So I would hope that if I had daughters, my wife would have a big part in instilling the qualities that she has into those daughters. But yeah, if it's a man, if I had boys, I would certainly want them to have hard, struggling lives, and I wouldn't want to spoil them in any way, shape, or form. I would want them to grow up through hardship. I would probably encourage them to do some martial arts at a fairly young age, and hopefully by the time they got to adulthood, they would be strong masculine men capable of overcoming adversity. But like I said, I don't have children, so I am largely considering myself unqualified to speak on this matter.
Well, I don't think you're unqualified at all. I actually agree 100% with everything you said, and I'll tell you for why. I have got a son, and I've got a young daughter. My son is 27 years old now. Now, he could have had it quite easy off me several times during his life. He's had it tough, without a doubt, and I could easily hand him money at several points, but I won't. And I refuse to do it because I came from nothing. As I said, I came from nothing. And the only way I succeeded and did what I did was through two things. One, as a child, my father was strict. He was strict and he made us go out to work and do stuff. And he instilled that sort of ethic into us. And so that's in me. Two, if I hand everything to my son now, then when I eventually pass away and hand everything to him, he's not going to know the value or the hardship I went through to get that, and it will be gone in no time.
Yeah.
So I think if we look at children and we look going back into the 60s and 50s, and some people will go, well, you're not living in the 50s and 60s now. No, but you can take some good from history and learn from it. And again, I'm not talking about abuse in any way, shape, or form. But in our schools, we got caned. At home, we would get a slap. And even the old Bill would grab us up, slap us around the head, take us home, we'd get a beating off our parents or our dads. Now, what that did was in school, it taught you to respect your teachers, which they have not got now. I've seen kids pick up chairs and throw it at teachers.
Yeah.
They don't respect the law in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Even us as kids on the street, you know, there could be a group of 5 or 6 of us, and if an old couple walked down the road, we would go quiet, we would move out the way, we would even say afternoon or evening, and as they walk past, we'd carry on mucking about or doing what we're doing as kids, which is fine. And at home, if we misbehaved or we were out of order to our mum, my dad would beat us. Now, my beatings were probably a lot more severe than people would call okay. But the point was, we have changed our society in the way we think and all that lot. Sit down and talk to them. Okay, if your kid goes out and beats someone up or murders someone, you're going to sit him at a table and go, right, son, we need to have a little chat, really. I don't think what you did was right. No, if from a younger age, you start giving them those boundaries, those good morals, and those good ways to respect and behave, you won't even get to that stage. I mean, obviously, you get psychopaths and you can't help that. But in general, you will teach them a good upbringing from a young age by being strict. Kids need boundaries and they need discipline. And your martial art thing or boxing was absolutely correct, because it teaches you discipline, respect, decency, and when to use your strength. So don't say you're not qualified, because I guarantee you, if you had kids now, you'd do a damn good job.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, with the martial arts, for sure. I think not only that, but it teaches a level of emotional control and confidence in conflict situations. It's an ability to stay calm in conflict. And it's amazing how many fights you can win just by staying calm.
Yeah.
People, I'm sure you know, people will, they're like, why is this guy calm? I'm going to back off.
Yep. I've had many fights in my time being in security and everything else. I've done pubs and all that lot. Yeah. And without a doubt, 99% of situations can be dealt with a brain and diplomacy and decency. Yes, yep. There are going to be occasions when it has to go the other way. And then if you have the ability, you're a very strong person to have both.
Yep. Completely agree.
So I'm just going to jump in there for anyone that is listening from another country. The old Bill is the police in this country.
Good point, bro.
No worries, dude. That's what I'm here for.
The old Bill, yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's cool. It's really interesting, isn't it, listening to this conversation from my point of view, because there's if you actually look, I love it when Camel says on his video sometimes, zoom out, and I try to zoom out on everything and observe possibly what's going on over, with a bigger picture. So if you look at, everything we've been talking about over the last hour and a half, I can't believe it goes that quick.
Oh, Jesus.
It's mad, isn't it? You see a breakdown of the general structure of society right at the core level over time, through generations, smoke and mirrors, distraction, all the different things that go on, attacks right down, well, not attacks, but different ways of educating young people. Divorce, you've mentioned it, you zoom out on it and you think, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see the dots here. It's more than just divorce. It's more than just teaching at schools. So if that has been, I don't know, we'll probably talk on the new channel about this Council of 13 business and that sort of setup. But if that's sort of an idea through decades of planning, maybe not that precise planning, maybe it was, I don't know, that complete breakdown. Now I can, you can see even more that once that's done, then you can start fucking about with a finance system and slowly changing people's ideas and getting that little bit more manipulation and feeding them these things. You can really see the breakdown happening. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's all these things starting to now come together more at the end of this cycle of whatever, and the end of this cycle and the beginning of a new, all these things sort of come in very quickly, although quickly can be 10 years, maybe 20 years, 15 years or whatever, coming together now. And it's difficult because you think, oh, you've got me at 60, you've got other people at 40, you've got other people at 20, you've got people at 10, you've got people at 90. It then becomes difficult to say, okay, do we fight this? Do we not fight it? Do we have faith that maybe something will change, or because we can all see the toxicity of what possibly can happen? What do we do? What do we do? Do we sit back, just look after our little friends and family and hope that's a rub off on society? But then you've got to look at the younger generation. Well, that's not going to affect the people that haven't got dads or families or whole families together supporting each other. What can we do? Is there anything we can do, or have we just got to have faith that hopefully
No,
things are all right?
I think in this total breakdown that we're seeing, with family breakdowns, with divorces, with all this gender stuff and all the rest of it, I believe that if you strongly believe in what you're saying, then speak up and say it. You got people like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, who speak up all the time about these things, because if these kids are being indoctrinated, I can't even say it, in schools, colleges and unis and all that lot, then there has to be the other side that fight back and say it. So I won't fear. If anyone says anything to me about this and they're on the other side, I will discuss it. Don't get me wrong. You'll find a lot of the left will just shout and scream at you. I will discuss it and I will put my points across, and I will never fear doing that. If you sit back and allow it to happen, well, then you're allowing society to carry on the way they're trying to mold us and break us down. Now, I'm not saying that my one voice is going to be enough, but if plenty of people are doing it, then we are already seeing a fight back against this, because we can see how it's causing a collapse. And you're seeing more and more people fighting back and going, no, I don't agree with this. It's a load of rubbish, and I'm not going to go with it. I had a discussion even with my business partner about it, where we were getting emails in, and the person at the bottom of the email would have she, they, or they, them, or ze, or whatever rubbish they wanted to call it. And I said, I will never do it. I will never put my name and put a pronoun afterwards. I'm not going to do it. And he said, well, it's for business. I don't give a damn. I'm not adjusting the older side of things to fall into place with this narrative. I'm not going to do it. And so remain strong, and speak up. Don't be fearful to speak up. And again, this is where we see politicians afraid to speak up. We see major corporations, you go into Lego and they'll have stuff up for all this transgender stuff and all the rest, or whatever it may be, because they're scared that if they don't hamper to this thing, they're going to lose business. I'm not scared. I don't care. And I will always speak up.
Cool. Is Camel still there?
Camel?
I am still here. Yeah, I am still here.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry, I did have to run off to the loo, but I just about made it back in time. My pronouns are they lied, just so you know.
Very good.
They lied.
Did you catch what I said before?
Some of it, yes.
Yeah, what do you think? What can we do going forward, dude? What's the best way forward? Do we just sit tight, do the best for our families, or do we try and recognize a way of sussing the system and working it out and trying to do what we can? What do you reckon?
I honestly think knowledge is power, and I'm very much a believer of you are against yourself in this life. So I think people get very distracted by looking left, looking right, and saying, well, this guy's got that, and these people have this, and how am I measuring up? But you're against yourself, right? And if you can just focus on being better than the you that you were 12 months ago, and then in 12 months' time, be focused on being better than that you from today, I think that's the best way to do it. And knowledge is power. Knowledge is king for sure. I think, if you're a man, then just try to be a man, right? Try to do the things you're supposed to do. Try to work out. Try to get your businesses sorted. Try to think differently. Try to author your own consciousness and your own opinions. And I mean, I can't really speak for women because I'm not a woman, so I don't really want to do that. But yeah, generally speaking, I think you're against yourself, right? And as long as you can improve on the you from 12 months ago, then you're going in the right direction. Any improvement is better than no improvement. And that's really all I think there is to it, right? Just visualize the character that you think is the maximum potential and then take incremental steps towards achieving that character.
Yep. That sounds a very positive way of doing it, isn't it? Cobra, do you want to add any more to that before I just move on?
No, I totally agree. But as I say, if we're looking at society and how we can fight back against this destruction of society as we know it, as I say, stand up for what you believe and speak out. Don't be afraid to disagree, but do it in a educational way, not just shouting and screaming, really.
And watch the new podcast channel.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, you can see by the demand for these sorts of
absolutely
authentic conversations, right? This is by no means a small niche anymore. This is slowly but surely becoming something that people are realizing. You can only exist in a world of lies for so long before people start to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are. I think that's why there's such demand for these sorts of conversations. And like I said, ultimately you're against yourself, right? If you just keep getting better relative to who you were 12 months ago, then, the world is going to be a better place. If everyone can just incrementally improve on themselves, move in the direction you want to move, then I think the world will figure itself out.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Great. The last bit of what I'm going to ask you both a question. With all that, what we've just spoken about, getting back to finance, because I'm sure there's lots of people here that say, oh, what's happening with gold, silver? How do I protect myself? And da 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 da. What with I think we're basically in agreement that we've got maybe some unsettled times going forward, and we've hit during the conversation maybe, and I remember, is it Camels? Kemazabi said one thing on one of your chats. There's nowhere to run sometimes, and there's nowhere to hide. And that must frighten the hell of a lot of people. And I think Cobra sort of mentioned it during the discussion. Well, what do I do with my money? Bearing in mind, we're going to maybe put across a little bit of stand up for yourself. Come on, be a man, work it out. What would be, and I don't want you to do it as advice, or what would you actually see as probably the most practical, sensible bit of opinion you could put across as we sort of possibly move into these unsettled times where we really don't know what's going to happen with prices, currencies, gold, silver, Bitcoin, whatever. What would you say? What without sort of going too mad with the advice thing? There's a tough one.
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, go on, please, Camel.
Can you repeat the question, CPM? What?
Not really.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'll answer it
okay.
first then, and
yeah, you answer it, Cobra, and I'll try and figure it out.
Yeah, God, no, I will.
Okay, go on then.
In a nutshell, we're coming up to uncertain times. I think we're all in agree with that.
Yeah.
What is a good play going forward? Is there a good play going forward? Have you just got to be on point, pretty much in recognition of, try and protect yourself the best way possible? If you're looking at Bitcoin, gold, silver, stocks and shares, whatever investments, what would it be? What would you say?
So if I start off, I'd say the first thing is, look, there are a lot of people out there who are uneducated in what is going on. They have no idea whatsoever. They are just going through life. I would say the first thing is, like both of you have said, and I agree totally, educate yourself as much as you can about fiat currency, about what's going on in governments, about the dangers that are up and coming. And then if we say, all right, well, how are we going to protect ourselves? Again, we've always said it through the assets. Well, gold and silver, I have always, and this is a personal opinion, so please take it like that. I've always said that gold is my number one, because I feel it's more stable, and it generally increases over time. So it's probably one of the best ways to keep your money. Silver, more volatile, but yes, you know, if you can only afford to buy a bit of silver because it all comes down to affordability as well, then that's another way. And yes, I agree with Bitcoin, but my fear of Bitcoin is that if you can do it on a long-term basis to protect your money, absolutely fine. But if you're putting it in there and you may need it in a year or two, then it may not be the best way. Stocks and shares, I will never say anything about because I haven't done enough research or actual practical usage of it. So for me, number one is a bit of gold, then silver or Bitcoin equally, and then maybe stocks, but that's not really my thing. And again, it's down to affordability. Not everyone can afford to do it, but I do still believe that even if monthly or weekly, you can buy one little bit of silver for 25, 30 quid, whatever it may be, or one little bit of gold, just do it. And don't do what a friend of mine did recently. Oh, I'm in the shit. I need to sell he just started buying a bit of Bitcoin. I'm in the shit. I need to cash out my Bitcoin. Well, number one, you're over leveraged. And number two, that is not the answer. If you're just going to pull it out, you might as well have not started in the first place.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately comes down to personal choice. But if you want to exit from the system, then you need things that do not carry any counterparty risk. And for that, it's really only a few things, right? Physical gold, physical silver, cold stored cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin. I mean, other than that, tech stocks are the only thing that outperform the debasement of currency over time. So anything other than Bitcoin, gold, silver, or tech stocks is kind of a waste of time, energy, and capital unless you are a highly proficient trader. And I think that's pretty much it from me.
Do you think that if the worst case scenario, if we go through this recession, do you think there's particular product that can protect you? Have you really got to be on point to protect that?
In terms of what, sorry? Like
protecting your wealth.
Well, what's the best way to protect it?
You know, worst case scenario, you know, if we go into recession, we get a blow off top, like we've been
I think you want a basket of everything. I
Okay.
think you want some gold, some silver, probably some stocks, probably some cash, probably some dollars, probably some Bitcoin cold stored, and maybe some property, some cars, some Rolexes. Well, not necessarily Rolexes, but like I don't know, stuff you can hold in your hand, right? Art, wine, whiskey, whatever you know, right? If you don't know anything about watches or art or whiskey, then don't buy it. You know, don't buy stuff you don't know. But anything you can hold in your hand is better than carrying counterparty risk, in my humble opinion. So yeah.
Cool. Do you think we're all fucked?
No.
No.
Just heading for a bit of a rough patch, but we'll be all right.
I mean, if we are effed, as you said, then what does that say to the rest of the population that aren't even buying gold, silver, Bitcoin, that kind of thing? Right? Like, we've got to be doing better than some, at least. So there's some positivity in that, I suggest.
Absolutely.
Wicked. Blinding conversation, guys. Is there anything else you want to talk about as we've got a little bit of time?
No, I think we've tidied that one up quite nicely, really.
Yeah, I do too. We went to a few places.
Yeah.
And yeah, look out for the next one, I guess.
Mate, it's gonna take on a very different it's gonna be a push down specific topics.
Oh, and I will say this, CPM.
Yeah.
I'm going fishing on Tuesday, and historically speaking, when I go fishing, the markets crash. So Tuesday 28th, put it in your calendar, and I'll be fishing, which usually means there's going to be some some dips for buying.
Can you just not go fishing?
No can do, mate. It's bass season. It's bass season, so we got to go.
Can't you go fishing with a purple tie on?
I can try that. I'm open to that. I'll see what I can do.
Wicked. Thanks, guys. Really appreciated your time. Really enjoyed that one. For anyone new watching this, where can we all find you?
Camel.
Promote yourselves.
You can find me at Camel Finance on YouTube or finance_camel on Twitter. And that's about it, really, to be honest.
And with myself, you can find me as Cobra Stacker on YouTube, and on Instagram under the same name, Cobra Stacker, or TikTok as well, though I don't post so much on that, but YouTube is where the channel is.
You got TikTok?
Yeah.
Have
I
you
don't
really?
use it much, yeah.
Have you got TikTok, Camel?
No, I tried it. I tried Instagram. I had a guy. Did you notice I was putting shorts out for a while?
Yes, you did, yeah.
Yeah, so I had a little guy. I didn't mean it like that.
One of your peasants?
So he was
One of your
doing
servants?
shorts.
One of your
No,
servants?
It was a young guy that reached out to me, and he said, "Oh, I can make some things for you and grow your channel." So I said, "All right, fine. Like, I'll try this out for a month." But he set up a TikTok and an Instagram and did some AI generated YouTube shorts for me, but it didn't really. I'm kind of glad about it, to be honest. He was trying to say, "Oh, we can draw in audience members from this, that, and the other," but it revealed a truth about the channel, which is that the channel is not. It's not aimed at people with short-term attention spans or low attention spans. It's aimed at people that are willing to put in the work, watch a little bit more long-form content, and so it's like a failed experiment. But yeah, I've had TikTok, I've had Instagram, and I'm quite pleased to say that we've gotten rid of those, and we'll be focusing on hopefully some longer form content ready for whatever is coming in the coming months and weeks, I guess.
Oh, wicked. Just to fill in the last couple of minutes, just going to ask you both a question on that topic. How are you finding being quite an influential type of creator on YouTube? Cobra, I'll ask you that one first. How are you finding it?
Well, I get a lot of calls. Obviously, I have my auctions every Friday. And so I sell gold, silver, collectible pieces as well as bullion. And because of that, I get a lot of phone calls of people asking me questions about all the stuff. So I have to be very careful because I know I have a reach out there and I know I have an audience. And I have to be very careful to advise or not advise, as it may be, people to think about their own circumstances and don't follow anyone. For one person, he may be able to spend £2,000-3,000 a week on gold and silver and collectibles. For another person, £25 a month on a single piece of bullion is the right move for them. So I think it's very important to understand that everyone is under different circumstances and one rule does not fit all. And so it's very important to make sure that you advise people if you're going to advise them in any sort of way, shape or form in that context.
Yeah, generally, how are you personally finding it? Are you enjoying it still? Or are you
I love it. I love it. I really do. I'm tired. I'm tired because I also have my security business and I'm very, very busy. But I do absolutely love it. Yes.
Cool. What about you, Camel? Because you've grown phenomenally.
Yeah, I love it. I love just I kind of don't have really a life. I live the markets. I live, breathe, and sleep the markets. And I think that actually makes me uniquely positioned, or at least if not uniquely positioned, it makes me positioned in a very beneficial way for YouTube because I can be consistent in my daily uploads and I can sit there and answer the comments whilst I'm looking at charts and stuff. So yeah, I really enjoy it. And I hope I'm wrong about my general ideas. I hope there isn't a big recession and a deflationary bust coming, but as of yet, we're not yet invalidated. So keep taking it one day at a time. And as I always say, we'll see what the market can give.
Please you started it.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. The community is fantastic. I've gotten to the point now where people make me AI images and they send me these things and there's inside jokes and community stuff and I absolutely love it. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'm absolutely loving being a content creator. There are periods where it's tougher than others, but generally speaking, I really like what I do and I just want to keep doing it really.
Wicked.
Can I
Excellent
fire
stuff.
that same question back to you, CPM?
What's that, mate?
Same question back to you.
Yeah, go on. Remind me what the question was.
It was your question.
Oh
How
no.
are you finding being a creator and an
Oh,
influencer?
sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I got so many. I have so many things buzzing around in my head. Yeah, loving it, dude. It can be very up and down while you're going on any new journey because you're trying to deal with your own sentiment and what you're trying to do with your own bit of life. But I think it's slowly being developed. Look, I won't keep it a secret, and I don't think I'll keep it a secret. I always mention it. I find it very difficult to have a lot of trust in people, especially when I'm not dealing with people at a physical level. So that has been a really big challenge for me because this is all virtual. I think I've said it to you, Cobra, loads of times, and Camel knows this as well.
Yeah.
I find it very much easier to sit down and have a conversation and judge a person physically through the normal context of body language and bits and pieces. And you can, for me, that helps me grow confidence in being around that person's energy. So it is a massive challenge, and that was probably one of the things that, excuse me, had to do recently for my own sanity was to actually start revealing who I am, because that's now made me a bit more comfortable. And I know there's a massive conversation around that, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do and stand up outside of the norm and maybe set a precedent, but it's just a set a precedent for myself and it makes me feel good. So I'm quite happy doing that now. From the way I can't believe, I've met you two, which is fantastic. I've met a few other people that have really seemed like really genuine people, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's given me confidence in this world. My channel has really been a journey, and I'm really pleased I'm splitting it now because I've got two sides that I can deal with now, and that I'm really excited. I am so excited about this new channel. Really, really excited because it allows me just to be me on one, and then go down this other avenue that I'm quite passionate about, and that's inspiring people to listen to proper conversation. And what I've always wanted to do was have a space where people can come and be themselves in a virtual way, and that's a big goal of this new channel. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it, mate. It takes up a lot of time, but it's really cool, really cool.
Lost volume massively on you.
Sorry?
Really low volume on you.
Oh, really?
Mine was okay.
Yeah, Cam, you still there?
Yeah, mine was fine.
Perhaps I'm being bugged. Perhaps I wasn't allowed to say that.
Hey.
Yeah, we've all gone weird. What's happened?
It's all fine on my end.
Yeah, I'm good. Cobra, you're right. We've lost him.
Oh dear.
Anyway, if you can help me, thanks, guys. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I'm really looking forward to the next time on the new channel, which will be really exciting.
Yep.
I don't know if Cobra can hear us, but
I'm here, but I can't hear you both very well at all. But I take it we're wrapping up, and yeah, thank you both. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
no problem at all. Love you lots. Take good care. See you soon. Cheers. Bye.